Why do people hate Usopp? He does better than any of us would in his place. This question was asked by user opposite tomorrow37 in the One Piece subreddit, and it's a pretty commonly asked question because Usopp does receive a lot of hate by the One Piece community, and it's for a lot of reasons. I mean, they are justifiable. Firstly, of course, Usopp is first and foremost a coward, especially early on in the story. He spent a large chunk of early One Piece running away, crying, or just begging not to fight when there is a fight. Like, comparing him to the monster trio, he just seems like he's kind of useless. Of course he isn't, but he definitely seems that way sometimes. A lot of One Piece fans are drawn to the series for the fearless aura farmers, like Zoro and Luffy. They always charge into battle with, no second thoughts. But Usopp, the thing with Usopp is he's almost constantly afraid. He always keeps saying, I'm gonna die, please someone save me. I mean, it makes sense, right? If we were in his situation, we would react almost the same way, let's be honest. And that's exactly what Usopp is. Usopp is the most normal person in the Straw Hats, right? But most fans don't really see the human side of Usopp. All they see is the scaredy cat, oh no, please someone save me side of him. That's the first reason. Another main reason why people probably hate him is because besides being a coward, he is of course a liar. It's literally in his name. Usopp means liar. Usopp is also straight up based off of the boy who cried wolf, so there's that as well. So his lies could potentially make some of his viewers hate him as well. It could even get to a point where his goal to become a brave warrior of the sea just seems a bit laughable because he just can't stop lying, The next reason is also a pretty major one. It is the Water 7 arc. It's a pretty major arc for both Usopp and Luffy. If you can remember, in the arc, the Straw Hats discover that the Going Merry is beyond repair basically, and they have to let it go. Luffy decides that the Going Merry has had its time and it's time to move on, but Usopp couldn't accept that, right? Because in his head, the Going Merry has always been a part of the Straw Hats. It has always been their friend. It has always been their partner. It has always been their ship. And so they couldn't just leave the Going Merry. It would be like leaving a friend, right? So he acted on his own selfish desire to keep the Going Merry, and that was what caused Usopp versus Luffy. And it's also what caused him to ultimately leave the crew. So Usopp acting on his own selfish desire would naturally make some fans hate him as well. Of course, we haven't even mentioned the fact that Usopp is, compared to the rest of the Straw Hats, fairly weak in terms of strength. He doesn't have a devil fruit, he doesn't have a mastery of Haki. He does have observation, but that's all he has. And he's not physically strong, as strong as Sanji or Zoro or something. If you compare Usopp to his crew members, he doesn't really look like much. He looks kind of pathetic, right? A lot of people often ask, why hasn't he grown enough? What did he do during the time skip? Why is he still so weak? Even though that's not really the point of Usopp's growth in the time skip. His growth was meant for his marksmanship, his ammo, not really his physical strength that much. Usopp is also very often used for comic relief. Oda and Toei very often portray Usopp as this, silly guy who just goofs around very often. And we don't really see him as a serious character as much as someone like Zoro or Luffy sometimes, He seems kind of silly. And so when a character is very often the butt of the joke, it's kind of hard to respect them, even when they do have serious moments. And Usopp does have serious moments, but he is primarily viewed as comic relief and not much else. On the topic of being a serious character, of course, Usopp isn't known for having cool fights at all. One Piece fans love cool fights like Luffy vs Katakuri, Luffy vs Kaido, Luffy vs Lucci, Zoro vs King, Sanji vs Queen. These fights are awesome because they pit two strong characters against each other, and it creates this amazing collage of animation and eye candy that One Piece fans just love digesting, and I love digesting it too, but Usopp doesn't really have that. Most of Usopp's major fights aren't really that serious. Like Usopp and Chopper versus Mr. Four and Miss Merry Christmas had a lot of gags, right? And it felt like a gag fight. Usopp versus Perona also, it was more of a psychological battle than an actual battle of strength. He only defeated Perona because of the cockroaches, you know, which is pretty funny. And of course, Usopp versus Sugar wasn't really a direct victory to Usopp. Sugar kind of gave him the win in a way, because Sugar fed him the hot sauce, and that was what caused the silly face. And beyond Dressrosa, Usopp barely did anything, let's be honest. He didn't really do anything in Wano, he didn't do anything in Egghead, so that's pretty much it. Most of his battles rely less on his strength and more on his trickery and his luck, right? And of course his marksmanship. And to some fans that could be pretty boring, and it doesn't create for spectacles of animation and eye candy like how the Monster Trio's fights would go. It's just less flashy and just less cool in general. So in summary, the primary reason why Usopp gets a lot of hate is because he's the most human in the Straw Hat Pirates, of course besides Nami as well. He doesn't grow as fast as Luffy or Zoro or Sanji. He has awakened observation haki, but that's the extent of his growth. His growth is gradual and it's the most realistic. Usopp is, at the end of the day, just a human. He's not some monster like Luffy or Zoro or Sanji, right? They are complete and utter anomalies in terms of strength as humans. Usopp is just a guy. He's not flashy, he's a coward. He's not as epic as the others, but that's also what makes Usopp so important. I think Usopp represents the idea that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's feeling that fear and choosing to fight in spite of it. Usopp is the most relatable Straw Hat, right? He's the one that stands among gods. He stands among the Sun God, he stands among the King of Hell, he stands among the wings of the Pirate King. Usopp is first and foremost a relatable Straw Hat. He's the one who stands in the shadows of gods, and he's the one that finds the guts to fight even though he feels so scared and he feels like he's gonna die. Even if he feels all of that fear, he still finds the courage to fight. Fight for his family and fight for his friends. That's what makes him a great Straw Hat, in my personal opinion. But what do you guys think? Is the Usopp hate justified or not? Let me know in the comments below. And of course, while you're down there, click the subscribe and like button. That'll be greatly appreciated. And I'll see you all in the next video.